we're the least Baptist church I know in terms of the stereotype of Baptist. Baptists get stereotyped. I clearly got a big dose of that moving to a church that has no denominational affiliation. Yeah. There was great suspicion of me as a quote Baptist pastor. Yeah. In fact, they would sometimes, this is our Baptist preacher we swore we would never have. You know? So yeah, part of the history is we were never, this church was never a typical Baptist church.
Yeah.
Not at all. I hope it never is.
I had breakfast with Greg Osborne yesterday, who their daughter Caitlin, so I'm told, was her birth and having severe special needs 3 months early was the first call right through that, or very, very early.
She was very, very early
one
call.
One of the first things in that.
Very early call.
Anyway, and to see that continuing on. And so I think last year was the 30th, last summer, I think, was the 30th
that would be about
anniversary of
right.
that, which we celebrated
in worship. You can figure backward from there.
Yeah, when that was. So,
Because we did not formally launch the study committee approach to ordination of women until the prayer ministry was in place.
Interesting.
And Randy did spearhead, Randy Fields did spearhead that for ordination of women.
And then it went through, was it...
It was controversial every step of the way.
Okay.
and
did Buckner come out and reveal that story? Like, hey, I came back.
Yeah.
And so that was known that he was very much in favor.
Oh, yeah. I don't recall that he talked about second Ponce.
Yeah.
But that he had a change of mind and a change of heart. He was very open about it.
Yeah. So he put his weight behind it then.
Absolutely. He put his weight behind it. Yes.
And then it was approved, and then to nominate new deacons, huh?
This was one of those times when Buckner did a unilateral.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Buckner would occasionally do unilaterals.
Yeah.
And he simply said, and I can't remember exactly, but the first women to be ordained as deacons, Betsy Thrift, Eloise Kalina, and maybe...
I think Phyllis Patterson was in that group.
She was early.
Yeah.
But the first three were really senior ladies.
Oh, senior ladies. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Betsy Thrift was very senior.
Yeah.
Eloise was very senior.
Yeah.
Might have been Lila Butler.
Okay.
But there were three women.
Yeah.
The first women to be ordained, there was three women.
Yeah.
And it became an up or down vote on those three women.
Senior, well-respected, well-known.
Highly respected, widowed ladies that and I could name a person right this moment that we will not name, but he pulled me and he said, "Now, how in the world am I supposed to vote against Betsy Thrift?" He says, "This is not fair. We haven't made this on principle. We've made it on personalities." And I just kind of smiled. I said, "Well, you can always vote against Betsy. You can, And if that individual who's still around is listening to this interview, he knows who he is."
Boy, that is interesting. That is interesting. But it is, I think that's marked Trinity for the better in so many ways. And now, half of our staff is female. And one of the great surprises of being here is how much pastoral care is done by our deacons and how many things our deacons do without really being a decision-making body. And I've had friends in ministry say, "What is making Trinity's deacons work like that?" And I was like, because 45% of them are female. I said that really is why that works so well, because you have this mix. You have you're pulling from your whole population, and it's affected any number of things positively.
And we also created what we call deacons on call.
Yeah.
Is that still going?
Oh, that's where, we don't have a pastoral care minister. We all participate in it because deacons really take the lead. There's generally two a week, pastor on call.
Same pattern.
And we have a big email. I get multiple emails a day of updates and where everybody is, and it's amazing.
I had the great privilege. The two guys that first took that on were Randy Clay and Buck Buckley. Okay. They said, we will take, and literally they came to me and said, we will take this and go with it if you just tell us what to do. So I had the great privilege on a weekly basis, Randy and Buck would meet with whoever the two deacons on call were.
Yeah.
And I would sit in with them and would have the prayer list, the hospital list, and we would sit right there and figure out who does what this week.
Wow. Yeah.
And some of those that were deacons on call would take that job so seriously.
Yeah.
They'd take a week off their job.
Wow.
They would take a vacation week
and do
to
that.
be the deacon on call. I'd forgotten that.
Man. And now, except for like emergency, where something happens and I get there quickly, and our staff divides this up as well. I don't do all of them by a far stretch. Karen Goodman does far more than anybody else on staff. Rare is there a visit I make where a deacon hasn't preceded me there, or is already scheduled. Hey, I'm coming by here, or a prayergram is not there. Those yellow prayergrams are famous. Well before we were even thinking about being pastor, our daughter had an accident, was in the hospital, and we have, before I was a candidate or known, several Trinity prayergrams that came to us, again, before we were ever connected. Had zero. Robert Creech was our connection. I think he shared our story with some in the church. Anyway, and so those are just, you'll walk into people and they have them up almost like Christmas cards in their house, of these things. And anyway, those things that endure from that
they're renowned.
It just continues to be lasting fruit there.
Well, my hour in the prayer room was 7 a.m. on Tuesday mornings.
Okay. Yeah.
For ever how many years.
Yeah.
And essentially spent that hour figuring out to whom was I going to write. And praying for that person as I wrote. And that was also the other genius in that we didn't fully anticipate. Is how many things we as pastors learned that were going on in people's lives that they would have never called and told us. We would have never known. We would have never found out. We didn't know how to minister to some people because we would never have known. The prayer ministry became the point of contact with a lot of things.
And that remains, not exclusively, but it's regular. We learn of needs, of any number of things through the prayer ministry is the first point of contact, and then it comes from Veronica or Lori or whoever it is to the pastors. And that took me a little bit to get used to, but I realized, that's actually a much healthier, long, for the church to have a ministry that does this other than being, all in pastors. But Johnny, this has been great. We could sit here and visit all day.
We could.
But I'd ask, so you've been involved with Trinity close up or from a little distance for 45 years or so now. As you think back on your experience at Trinity, the history of Trinity, do you see things that kind of have animated Trinity's history from its beginning, your experience here, that feels like it continues today? What are some of those traits or characteristics, however you want to phrase that really animate Trinity that seem to stay consistent through the years, through the seasons?
Number one, we're misnamed.
Okay.
Trinity Baptist Church.
Yeah.
We're the least Baptist church I know in terms of the stereotype of Baptist. Baptists get stereotyped. I clearly got a big dose of that moving to a church that has no denominational affiliation.
Yeah.
There was great suspicion of me as a quote Baptist pastor. Yeah. In fact, they would sometimes, this is our Baptist preacher we swore we would never have. You know? So yeah, part of the history is this church was never a typical Baptist church.
Yeah.
Not at all. I hope it never is.
I find myself visiting with new visitors saying, we're not that type of Baptist church. And I don't even know always what I mean by that.
Yeah, I understand.
We don't really fit any of a lot of the wonderful things about being Baptist, some of the theological type things, but some of the other, perhaps, other things we don't, political and otherwise, that we don't fit it. That's a good thing.
Yeah. So that would be one thing. Yeah. We're very atypical Baptist. Yeah. The other would be the word innovation. You sort of prompted me to think about this in advance, and that I think pre-Buckner, this was innovation. This was a church of innovation that looked around itself and said, what's happening in the world around us, and let's address that. Yeah. Buckner did that.
Yeah.
He looked around and says, how do people, will they communicate over television? He said, I'm going to do television commercials. And he says, I'm not going to do a television preaching program. Yeah. I'm going to do commercials. People watch commercials. Frankly, when I got here and looked around and said, we're living through a culture of divorce. Yeah. Divorce is becoming a big piece of our culture. I've been given an assignment for single adult ministry. Yeah. Where do we go from here? Yeah. And so it was a combination of innovation and awareness of what's around us. Yeah. I've always said about this church, I've never, ever lost optimistic faith about the ministry of this church in this location. Yeah. If you took a compass, put the point on Trinity Baptist Church location and said, we're going to draw a circle for 2 miles. It's arbitrary, 2 miles, 3 miles, 5 miles, whatever it is, but a very reasonable distance. Yeah. And draw that circle. There's probably 150 to 200,000 people inside of that circle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah.
And all we got to do is reach 0.5% of those.
Yeah.
And we have a megachurch. Yeah. You reach 0.5% of the people inside that circle. Yeah. You have a megachurch. Yeah. Now, who's inside the circle?
That's a good word.
And in the circumference around this church, you've got Tobin Hill, some of it marginal, economically, socioeconomically. Yeah. You've got Terrell Hills. Yeah. There was at least one billionaire sitting in there. Yeah. You've got Anglo-Caucasian. Yeah. You've got Hispanic. You've got African American community. Yeah. You've got the St. Mary's Strip. Yeah. You've got the Broadway. Development.
Now the Pearl and all of the condos and apartments and you get downtown.
You got downtown living. Yeah. Just make it a 2 mile circle. Yeah. You probably could make it a 1 mile circle. That's very dense population. Yeah. You've got San Antonio College. You've got Trinity University. Yeah. You've got Incarnate Word University. Yeah. You just look at who's inside that circle. In every direction, north, south, east, and west, who's inside that circle, then you come up with a church of gigantic, enormous diversity. Yeah. I've always thought this church ought to be very diverse. Yeah. And frankly, in my time, that really didn't happen. Yeah. The church's demographic was like a funnel. It went from here north. Yeah. Yeah. and virtually no one was from outside that funnel.
Yeah.
I always thought that was not.
Yeah.
I didn't say that a lot, but I thought, my thoughts were, this is not the way it ought to be.
Interesting. Huh.
And there was a strong impetus on at least one occasion that we ought to sell this property and move north.
Really? Wow.
Yes. Strong emphasis.
Yeah.
And I personally was always opposed to that. I just said, if we do that, we're leaving a carcass behind, and I don't want the testimony of that carcass left behind.
Yeah.
I was always very opposed to that.
Yeah.
And but I've got that.
Yeah.
There's a circle.
And place matters. I mean, it matters.
Absolutely,
deeply.
it does.
And now you're seeing, well, there's growth all over San Antonio. You can't look at any part that's not growing. So but certainly this area is growing, and it's growing up. You're seeing apartments and condos and things coming in all over which bring whole new challenges and whole new opportunities. And so, I think Trinity matters in this. It matters, period. But this place matters.
That's my conviction.
And I think that's something to build on.
That's my conviction.
Well, Johnny, thank you for coming down and visiting. I didn't say this early on when I was a brand new pastor, straight out of seminary in Marble Falls. Johnny had just come fairly recently to church at Horseshoe Bay and was the first pastor to take me to lunch. And we formed a good friendship now quite some time ago. And so it's been fun to reconnect through being back at Trinity. And thank you for your ministry here. Thank you for all you mean to this church. And thanks for coming and sharing some stories today. We're grateful for you.
Biggest piece of my life was right here.
Yeah. Friends, thank you for tuning in. Continue to tune in each week as we offer new episodes telling different stories of the history and God's movement at Trinity Baptist Church. Please like, please subscribe, please share with your friends. Have a great day.